Well, hello, everybody. Welcome once again. This is Syracuse basketball postgame. It's presented by Krause Health, and we're coming off the heels of a tough blow for Syracuse. Tough loss in South Florida. Miami topped Syracuse tonight. Final score 82-78. Syracuse will fall to 12-7 with the loss overall, 5-3 in ACC play in a game where too many mistakes were made down the stretch, particularly by freshman point guard Judah Mintz. Syracuse got out-rebounded. There was some, questionable officiating. That's certainly not why Syracuse lost this game. They kind of gave it away, had a 11-point lead on the road against one of the better teams in the ACC, and just let it slip right out of their hands tonight. So a lot to go over here. We will highlight your comments as we go. If you're joining us here live, appreciate those of you doing that. If you're watching sometime in the future, then we appreciate that, as well as this archives on YouTube and all our social media channels that you're watching now, and put it in my recap on syracuse.com as well. So here we go. Let's start going through the comments from you. And I'm sure you guys are fired up about this one. David, with what a lot of Syracuse fans, I feel, are just expressing right now. A lot of close shots, as Paul notes here. Blown opportunity, as Chris brings up here. So close, as Lori brings up here. Dale notes, is it my imagination, or were there some discrepancies and fouls called? Bruce says, tough one to lose. Judah tried to play hero ball at the end, but he'll live and die with Judah every time. He will learn from this one. Matt says that one stung, leaving Mitzen to fail. Will pay off his worst game of the year. Brandon saying, I understand it was a learning experience for Judah, but games like this, you've got to put Symir in. If he finishes that game, we win. Let's start right there. And I think a lot of you guys, and gals for that matter, are going to have an opinion on that one way or the other. I said this on Twitter during the game. I'll say it to you guys now. Judah Mintz should not have been in that game. Judah Mintz was making too many mistakes. He was playing hero ball, as noted. He's driving into the paint with no intentions. He's taking off-angle shots. He just didn't have it. Judah Mintz has more than earned everything he's gotten this year. I'm a big fan of his game. I think a lot of you are a big fan of his game, right? The next shot's always going in, the tenacity, the confidence, right? But you can't leave him in there for the sake of leaving him in there when he's playing that bad. Symir Torrence has got to be on the floor. Joe Girard was coming through. It wastes a great effort. We're going to go over the numbers here shortly. Jesse Edwards with a career high. He's dominating in the paint. Now, it wasn't just Judah. Syracuse struggled to rebound down the stretch and really just gave away too many possessions overall. But look, you live and die with a freshman point guard, and for the most part, Syracuse has really benefited from his play, but he cost you a quad one game tonight, and Syracuse has a few more quad one opportunities to come, but it's not hyperbole to say that a loss like this is the difference between making and missing the NCAA tournament if it comes down to being in that conversation, which Syracuse is nowhere near right now. You need quad one wins. Syracuse had the lead on the road, and look, it's a learning experience. You hope he benefits from it. That was not a typical performance from Judah out there tonight, but you got to be fair and you got to call it like you see it. And look, Judah cost them this game. It's as simple as that. The freshman point guard just made too many mistakes. He looked like a freshman out there tonight, when in a lot of the season he has not. And that's a credit to him. He'll bounce back. He'll have more great games than bad in a Syracuse uniform, but this one really, really stings considering what was on the line for the Orange. Brian laying it out there. Frustrating. Miami secret sauce getting to the free throw line. That's what they did, going 25 of 28. There was a little discrepancy, as somebody brought up, in the free throw line, but look, the refs are going to do that. Call the flop or don't call the flop, right? There were several flops not called on Miami. A lot of contact on. How about Joe Girard in the paint tonight, by the way? Joe Girard ends up with just 1 3-pointer on the night, but had a great game, living in the paint, scoring in the paint. He's looking like Jesse Edwards in there. Benny Williams gave you quality minutes tonight. Again, we're going to go over the numbers here shortly, but just a wasted effort. Not a wasted effort, but, you didn't capitalize on that effort. Because of just too many mistakes made down the stretch by a freshman point guard here. So let me highlight a few more of your comments, then we'll dip into the numbers a little bit here and see how this one played out. Jamie notes it a disappointing loss. Not a bad loss, but could have been a stellar win. Comes down to immaturity on Mintz, who I love, by the way, but tonight he wasn't good, and bad decisions by Boeheim. Symir slows the pace and should have been in there in crunch time. I completely agree with you, Jamie. I mean, I don't know why Judah's on the floor in that sense. He just can't be. He's just struggling too much. You pat him on the butt and you say, hey, you gave it what you had tonight. We got to let Symir take us home tonight. And maybe he doesn't have those mistakes. It wasn't anything in particular that Miami was doing. It was something that Judah was doing, or in this case, wasn't doing. As Doug notes, too many second chance points. Men struggle. Why does this team never throw the ball long on inbounds plays when they're down late? Mark brings up another strong point about what happened at the end of this game. No defensive rebounds down the stretch. And this was a game, Mark, where they were actually rebounding well. I think, let me look at the final numbers here while we're talking about it here. Rebounding wise, Miami ends up, let's see here, out rebounding Syracuse 40-36, 24 defensive rebounds to 20 for Syracuse. The offensive rebounds were actually even at 16 apiece, but I'd like to see those numbers from like the last 5 or 6 minutes, because Miami just throttled Syracuse on the boards in that stretch of it. As Mike notes here, why not go to a senior point guard when your freshman is playing awful? Live by the freshman, die by the freshman, as Jerry notes here. Bernard says Malik Brown would have helped tonight on the inside. He could play at the same time as Benny. You know, Bernard, they actually did that for a while. There was a lineup where Benny and Malik were in at the same time with Joe, Judah, and Jesse. I like that lineup, and Benny earned his minutes tonight. It's just a game. Again, you waste a great effort from Benny and Jesse with a career high. Joe scoring in the paint, adjusting his game, not hitting from the outside, so he takes it in. And frankly, should have been at the free throw line a heck of a lot more. By the way, Gerard hit hard by, I didn't see who it was for Miami at the end. I'm pretty sure it was Omir, and the refs just let that go too. I just, look, again, call it or don't. Just be consistent. If the new flop rule is in place, then call the flop rule. I mean, the inconsistency on the part of these officials it just drives me crazy. David says Judah's a very good player. The talk of him going to the NBA draft has got to stop. He's good, but needs to mature. Yeah, they brought that up. I'm surprised Dave O'Brien said that on the broadcast tonight. He's not in one and done territory at this point. Michelle brings up a good point. Was Mintz fatigued? Coach B should have pulled him. Look, you're getting to that time of the year, 2 and 3 days, one at home, one on the road. Games getting more physically taxing, teams coming after you. You know, you've only played at this point, Syracuse is 5-3 in ACC play. There's 8 ACC games in. You got about 11 to go, right? It's a grind, man. It's a grind to play these games 2 and 3 days. I don't think he was fatigued necessarily, but he certainly was making a lot of mistakes out there. So you guys keep at it here in the comments. Appreciate everybody coming by tonight and being a part of the conversation. But let's jump in and look at some numbers from this one. As Syracuse shoots 43%, Miami 42%, pretty even there. Syracuse 6 of 20 from three-point range. Miami was 7 of 23. Man, Nigel Pack was hitting shots. He was 5 of 9 from three-point land. That kid was hitting shots from, you got to be kidding me, territory, beyond the logo. And look, if you're Syracuse, you got to give him that shot. If you put a guard that far out when you got a dude shooting from the logo, you're going to get in trouble. So you got to give him that shot. This isn't a case of Syracuse playing poor three-point defense, but that kid was hitting from deep. He's hitting from, all towns of Miami, right? He's hitting from South Beach. He's hitting from Coral Gables. He's hitting from all over the place. He's hitting from Tallahassee, the way that kid was shooting the ball. Unbelievable tonight. Syracuse with just 9 turnovers on the night. Miami had 11. In that case, we mentioned the rebounding edge that Miami had in this one overall, 40-36. Points in the paint ended up favoring Miami 34-30, but Syracuse was very good there. We mentioned Jesse's great game. He had 25 points and 11 rebounds. It's his 9th double-double of the season. That's a career high, 25 points for Jesse Edwards. Joe Girard with 21 points on the night, and he only had 1 3-pointer. Shows you how he lived in the paint, was great in there, adjusted his game, loved how he played. Benny Williams gives Syracuse 31 minutes, 12 points, 5 rebounds. He's scrapping in there and playing the way Jim Boeheim has called for him to play. Chris Bell took a step back tonight after that 17-point night against Notre Dame, just 3 points on the night for him. Judah Mintz, we mentioned, really struggled tonight, 3 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists for Judah, and 5 turnovers. on the night. And that's not typical of Judah. His assist to turnover ratio is usually pretty good, but certainly was not tonight. Malik Brown didn't have the typical good game he's been having as of late. He played 12 minutes, just 2 points and 2 rebounds for him tonight. Justin Taylor with 8 points ended up fouling out in the game. That last foul on Justin Taylor was just a joke, as we were talking about with some questionable calls from the officials. For Miami, Omier led the way along with Beverly. Each had 16 points. We mentioned all the threes from Pack. He had 15 and Miller with 13. Isaiah Wong with just 9 points. He was in foul trouble, shot just 1 of 8 in this game, 6 of 7 at the free throw line. Miami's best player was even held in check, and Syracuse couldn't get it going there. All right, back to your comments. And back to what you guys and gals were saying about this one. Let me catch up with you guys a little bit here. David notes here, JG3 is the power forward at Syracuse. Yeah, he was great in the paint tonight. I was very surprised. He was taking that Buddy Boeheim kind of fade back shot on the free throw line, challenging Miami in the paint. I got to give him credit for that. He's added that element to his game, and he knew he didn't have him from the outside. It's okay. We're not going to live and die by the three-pointer tonight. We're going to score the way we can. Had a lot of confidence there. As Mikey says, Benny had a great game. Joe was amazing from mid-range and down low, as we're discussing. Sarah notes that I needed this one and let it slip away. I agree with Symir being in. He calms it down, makes the right play. Judah made freshman mistakes. I think that's – I wonder what Jim Boeheim is going to say about this in postgame. I think that's a mistake on his part. You can't leave a player in there that's struggling that much. And Judah – has learned so much. I think he's going to be a great player. I'm a big fan of his game, but in the moment, you need an experienced player in there, calm things down, run the offense, because Symir's not playing hero ball. Symir's not driving in on odd angles. He's not taking on players he shouldn't. I think Judah was maybe looking for some contact on some of those plays down the stretch, but given the inconsistency of the officials, I get the spirit. I get what he's trying to do, but this is where Judah's got to be a point guard. A point guard's got to make decisions. A point guard's got to run the offense and really know the difference between running the offense and being the offense. And in this instance, if he's in, which he shouldn't have been, you run the offense. You go to Jesse, you go to Joe, you got to defer. If you don't have it, you don't have it. This is the big lesson that Judah's got to take from this game, right? I get shoot and the mentality and the confidence that players have, but you got to be smart. This is a really good team on the road that would have been a quad 1 win for Syracuse, and they let it slip. And they let it slip because their freshman point guard just you're going to be put on the spot. It's going to be a learning experience, just like Saturday was a learning experience against Notre Dame, and all those freshmen learned how to play in a tight game and come back 12 points down. This is just the other side of the lesson and the harshness of a lesson like this. As Rick notes, forgot to get the ball to Jesse late. Also, why is Jesse staying high so long when the pick doesn't materialize? Killer, timely rebound misses, coulda, woulda, shoulda. Kane guards are quicker than Judah. Matt says Judah wasn't the only reason they lost this game. Poor coaching to leave him in and lack of rebounding in the last 10 minutes. Both good points there. Matt, Doug saying what cost them was every shot Miami missed. Nobody would rebound. Yeah, that was just agonizing to see how many rebounds Syracuse missed down the stretch. Couldn't get there. And like we said, they had a pretty sizable gap rebounding for most of the game. But I'd like to see the numbers in the last 6-7 minutes. Miami just dominated, absolutely dominated in that case. Dave says, look at Judah's stat line. That's not winning basketball. Whereas the stat line from Saturday, 14 points, 8 assists, 1 turnover. That's winning basketball tonight. I'm surprised it's only 5 turnovers, frankly. I mean, you can count a couple other things as turnovers, some bad decisions that he had out there. Just, I feel bad for him because I think he leads this team in a lot of ways for a freshman. I really enjoy watching him play. I like his spirit. I like his confidence, but he really learned about decision-making tonight. He kind of reminded me of Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen always thinks the next throw is going to go, but sometimes he'll throw deep when he's just got to settle the team down, take what the defense gives you, move the ball up the field, right? Judah tried to play hero at the end of the game, and it cost Syracuse the game. Look, there's no way to candy coat this. He cost them the game. It wasn't the only thing. Rebounding, some decision-making, certainly are put into the equation as well. But if you're going to point at the primary reason Syracuse lost this game, frankly, your freshman point guard cost you a game. And he shouldn't have been in there. So you could put that on Boeheim too. That's just, he can't be in there when he's that lost and is committing that many turnovers at this point. As Jimmy notes here, difference was the late turnovers, nothing more. Second chance points and offensive rebounds were even. Brian says 18-18, 12-point leads blown. Last 3 games versus Miami. That's a very astute point there. Miami's now won 3 in a row against Syracuse. By the way, Matt saying Syracuse has to save a timeout for late game scenarios. They used their last timeout with 1:23 to go. So, yep, they were out of timeouts down the stretch there. Certainly with the way Judah was turning the ball over, they needed to take a timeout, get everybody settled, draw up a good play, although sometimes Syracuse drawing up play is not exactly the best thing for this team. Sarah says Benny finally showed up. Loved his work ethic. Hope it continues. Sarah, that's the trick. Benny will have a great game like this and then have 4 bad games. The difference was the hustle. He was battling. He took smart shots. He had a beautiful shot from the wing. Let me look at my notes here. There was about 5 minutes to go. I noted it here. 5:51 to go. Benny hits a great jumper on the wing. Makes it 66-63 at that point. Smart, smooth. What we think we, have been hearing about Benny and how he plays at practice, just haven't seen it carry over into the games. Carried over into a game tonight against one of the best teams in the ACC. There's Joe. Why can't we run a play at the end, call the timeout? Well, they didn't have a timeout after the 1:23 mark, Joe, if that's what you're referring to. They didn't have any left, but that's why I got to save those timeouts, as it was noted a little bit earlier. And another great comment. Brian says Larinaga knew getting to the line was the difference in the opportunity. We needed to be aware to prevent that. Another Brian says, what's up, Brian? Good to see you. Final score notwithstanding, Joe Girard played exceptionally well tonight. He adapted his game. He didn't flake out. He's the leader we've hoped he'd be. Joe struggled Saturday. Before that, he had 10 straight games where he scored in doubles. In the last 5 prior to Notre Dame, he averaged 23 points. So for Joe to adjust his game, figure out what was best, score in the paint, don't force it from the outside in a game where he didn't really need threes. We went over the numbers earlier and how neither team was really going at it from 3-point range tonight. They needed Joe to bounce back. For me to tell you that Joe Girard had 21 points and he had 1 3-pointer, like if you had come up to me on the street and told me that today, I would have told you you're crazy. But good on Joe for adjusting his game. You need that guy to hit threes, but when it's not there, it's not there. So here what we're talking about is the difference between a veteran player who knows what's not there, doesn't force it, adjusts his game. Miami didn't see that coming. Every scouting report they had on a short turnaround on Joe Girard was this kid shoots threes, and he spent all night in the paint. Judah's got to learn the same thing. And you can only learn by playing. You can only learn by doing. There's just certain things that Judah doesn't know. Now he knows. But again, some of this has got to be put on Boeheim. Your freshman's struggling. He's lost. He's turning the ball over. Like, you got to get him out of there. You got Symir Torrance sitting right there, who I'm not saying that means Syracuse wins, but I'm saying he probably doesn't turn the ball over at that rate. He makes smarter decisions, better passes down the stretch. And folks, this one stings. This is Miami. It's a quad 1 game. It's a good team at the top of the league. There's only so many of these opportunities. Syracuse doesn't have any quality wins outside of Virginia Tech. They had won 9 of their last 11 prior to this. And I love the way they played against Notre Dame and learned those lessons. But Notre Dame is 174 in the net ranking, right? So, man, you win this game on the road and continue that stretch. There's just so much you can build off from there. You got Georgia Tech on Saturday, okay? Weird stuff happens in the ACC, but that's a game that I would think you win. You got North Carolina coming up. You got Virginia Tech coming up. You got Miami coming up. So there's 3 more quad 1 games before this month is over. But to have this one in your back pocket and the leverage that would have given you going into those other games, all winnable at this point. Virginia at home, winning at Virginia Tech, not going to be tough, but Syracuse has a win in their back pocket against them. And North Carolina is usually a tough matchup for Syracuse. But see, what we saw tonight, and this could be construed as a good thing for Syracuse. What we saw tonight, there's not one team in this league that's untouchable. right? Clemson is 7-0. They just got ranked this week, right? Duke's out of the poll. We saw Miami tonight. Pittsburgh, Syracuse lost to Pitt by 2. They were down 20 in that game, had to furiously come back to cut the lead to 2, but they showed they can run with that team. And that's going to be a tough game to go back there and win at the Oakland Zoo. That crowd is back and really into it, and a tough environment always. But there's not a team in this league that Syracuse can't hang with. They can play every team in this league, and they proved that tonight. And to have those mistakes cost you, it's almost the script you would write talking about a young team, but they were playing beyond that. They weren't playing like a young team, but we saw it happen tonight. Mikey notes how bad the refs were in this game. I can't disagree with that. They were inconsistent, not calling the flops. Contact was inconsistent in terms of what they were calling at this point. I did not like that tonight. Did not like those refs and the way how inconsistent they were there. Lee says play Brown and Benny at the same time. Benny can play the 3. We should at least see what that looks like. We did see it a little bit tonight. Perhaps we'll see it a little bit more down the stretch. Pat says Judah's allowed to have an off night. He's been carrying this team. These other guys need to step up, especially if fighting for those minutes. Richard says Mintz is why we lost. Everyone knows at the end of the game, he's going to drive the lane. Edwards needed more shots, and yet Jesse had 25 points. He was, Jesse easily could have had probably 30 points in this game. You tell me if I'm just crazy here, but were there not like 4 or 5 shots in this game? There was 1 3 by Joe Girard in particular. I have no idea how that ball didn't go in. And it was both rims. It wasn't, sometimes one rim is a little bouncier than the other. There were 4 or 5 shots that Syracuse took tonight that I could not believe didn't go in. The way that ball rims out sometimes befuddles me. And there were a few shots where that happened tonight. In particular for Jesse, he had 25 points, he had a career high. He could have had 30. He just missed a few of those bunnies that I was just surprised didn't drop in. And that's the thing that is a bummer, because Syracuse's best players played their best. Jesse Edwards, Joe Girard. You get a little help from Benny, right? You held Miami's best player to 9 points, and most of that was at the free throw line. Now, again, you got Pack hitting those threes from way out, and it's like, fine, dude, you're going to hit the shot from 35 feet. You go ahead and do that, right? You can't defend that. Omier, let me go back to Omier's numbers. Who he leads the ACC in field goal percentage. He's been a terrific transfer for Miami. Jesse handled him. Jesse outplayed him. Jesse wasn't stopped by Omier, who ends up with 16 points on the night, 16 rebounds as well. He was huge down the stretch in that aspect for Miami, but Jesse won that battle, right? So it's not like you got held in check there. Omier is a great player, but you countered that with what Jesse did. You held Wong to one of his worst performances of the season, and you let it slip out of your hands. So that's going to sting. That's going to sting. Tim says when Mintz isn't scoring, he's trying too hard, needed to pull him for Symir. Lynn notes that the foul shots made a difference. We didn't make them all. They made most. Judah had a bad night. Take him out. So what you're saying, Lynn, is free throws matter. Is that what you're saying? I think that's what you're saying. Let's go back to that number. Free throws. Syracuse 14 of 17, Miami 25 of 28. How did Miami now? Let me see something here, because this just doesn't add up. It just goes to show you the inconsistency of the officials here. I'm looking at my box score here for fouls called. I don't see it right here in front of me, but Miami getting to the free throw line 28 times and Syracuse getting to the free throw line 17 times. That's a mystery. They both shot well, 82% to 89%, but how Miami got to the line that much more than Syracuse, yeah. Don't you hate it when officials make that much of a difference in a game like this? Not why they lost, but just hate that they called it as inconsistent as they did. Al notes it here. They did not rebound down the stretch. Lori says Omier should have fouled out in the third quarter. That's what we're talking about here. Can't disagree with you there. Timothy says you can't have a bad night against a top team if you think you're an NBA draft pick. Brian, back to Brian. It says third fouls on Jesse, ticky-tack. may have to lay off a little bit. Jim says, for those who like to blame refs, Syracuse ranks the best in ACC at -17 versus opponents. Saw that stat on ACCPM. But what do we see tonight? We just went over the free throw disparity there. So you're right about that. But in tonight's game, that was not the case. I hate to keep coming back to the refs, but there's no way that Miami should have had 11 more free throws than Syracuse. That just does not add up in a game like this. Antonio says Miami is a top 20 team. We had them by 10 points at their court. This was a real letdown. Dale noting there's a reason why this team's number 17. Honestly, it could be a top 10 team if they start winning some games, putting some things together again. They lost a couple close games this year. One to NC State this past weekend, just ACC play. NC State's going to be a tough game for Syracuse as well. Bill notes part of the blame on the coach. He had a terrible game, and the coach needed to tell him to look for teammates. Terrible decision, selfish play. Jim's just got to take him out. You just got to take him out of the game. You can't. You got to read the room, read the moment, see what's happening. He's just lost. And by the way, next game, Judah Mintz will play 37 minutes. He'll learn from this. Sometimes learning experiences, you gave us what you did, kid. You're turning the ball over too much. You're a liability. I can't keep you out there right now, but you're my man. You're going to be right back out there the next game, right? It's a different thing than, say, how Benny's been handled, how Chris Bell has been handled, and some other guys who, a little shorter leash, not as much slack for some of these guys. Judah's had all the slack in the world. Tonight was the night you had to kind of zip it back and say, not tonight. You can't be out there. You're costing us right now. What's up, Robbie? He says, how many minutes per game does Symir get in place of Judah and Joe? Love Judah. He's going to learn from this, but Symir has earned at least 20 minutes a game, especially while Judah takes in justifiable in-game coaching from Boeheim and company. Like that comment from Robbie. Man, you guys are coming fast and furious tonight. I love it. Could barely keep up with you. Frank says, last year, Q's played Miami twice, had an 18-point lead, lost both games. Tonight would have given Syracuse a much-needed quad one win. I don't think we need the Joe Biden comments in there, but we'll let that one go. I love Judah's energy, but he's no way ready for the NBA. This is a tough loss to digest. Different, Franks, as Mintz needs to realize when he goes against three defenders, you kick it out. You learn that in high school. And see, here's the thing, guys. He does know all this because he has been doing it. He's been dishing well. He's drawn double teams. He got to the free throw line a bunch against Notre Dame, hit those free throws. The mistakes we saw tonight are pretty atypical of him. I shouldn't say atypical. They're not typical of him. He'll make a couple a game, but the ones he just kept making on consecutive possessions tonight, he actually isn't typically that kind of player. He makes freshman mistakes like any freshman would, but not at the rate that we saw tonight. And that's just the shame of a loss like this. So now it puts a little more pressure on this team to win the upcoming quad one opportunities that are in front of them. Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and you take care of business against Georgia Tech. You can't slip on a banana peel in that matchup coming up here. Oh, boy, you guys are just piling on here. I can barely keep up with you. That's a good thing. Josh thinks Miami's an average team. I got to disagree with you, Josh. I think that's a good team. Yeah, that's an Elite Eight team last year. Wong didn't play well. Omir's coming along. You got a great three-point shooter out there in Park, who we talked about, who's hitting it from, way, way, way out. Or Pack, not Park, pardon me. Pack just hitting shots from way out. I think Larry is a great coach, first-time nominee for the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't call that an average team. Where I'll go with you a little bit is the ACC doesn't have a dominant team. They just don't at this point. You got some teams at the top of the league, but no one has separated themselves. Clemson's 7-0, and I'll give them that. But has Clemson really this could just be the pollsters that have been asleep at the wheel. They should have been ranked long before this, but they just got in the poll this week. Clemson, I'm going to tell you guys, I know this game's not until like late February. That is a nightmare matchup for Syracuse. I don't think there's a team in the league that provides more of a nightmare matchup than Clemson does. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if they keep up the pace they're at. Ira says, I understand it didn't matter, but something should have been called on that cheap shot at Joe Girard at the end. 100%. Why the refs just are like, yeah, let's get out of here. That's bogus. I mean, Omir that was like that could have been a flagrant one. I'd like to see the replay on that, but call something. You can't just let that go because it's at the end of the game. Completely agree with you on that one, Iris, but that just goes to show you the refs that we had in this one. So hopefully, let me see if I have the crew on my box score here. Let me see. I don't have it right here in front of me, but I'll find out who they are and they're ACC refs, so you're going to run into them again at some point, but hopefully not too much, right? And Teddy TV wasn't even in the building, right? Knock on wood. Teddy TV's actually been pretty good this year, and I just jinxed it. My fault on that. Bernard says Miami super veteran athletes and heady players deep. So is Notre Dame, by the way. But the difference is Miami's got players inside. We mentioned, so let's stop picking on Judah for a minute. Miami just dominated the boards down the stretch, and that was absolutely huge. Syracuse won the board battle for about 34 minutes. The last 5 or 6 minutes, all Miami. All the time, all the possession. Syracuse, I think, got 2 rebounds in the last 4 or 5 minutes. I'm probably off there a little bit, but probably not by much at that point. That was absolutely huge, and that's the difference between a team like Notre Dame that doesn't have an inside presence and a team like Miami that absolutely does. Richie thinks maybe John Bolajak could have made a little bit of a difference on the wing. Great passer, pretty good rebounder, not an offensive threat, but he's been kind of knocked out of the rotation as of late. Michael saying at one point when Taylor missed an assignment and the Miami player threw down a dunk, when the horn sounded for a sub, Benny instinctively started heading for the bench, even though he wasn't coming out. I didn't catch that, Michael, but I certainly believe something like that could happen, given how much he's been pulled. He was pulled earlier in this game. He made a turnover, right to the bench he went, but came out and played some quality minutes. So Syracuse will have to recover from this one against a team that is not going to help your resume. Georgia Tech is next on Saturday, so they're going to have to kind of do what they did against Notre Dame, hopefully not get in a 12-point hole and have to crawl out of that, but take care of business and win and set themselves up for Carolina, set themselves up for Virginia and Virginia Tech as we're halfway through the month. But by the end of this month, Syracuse is going to have 3 more quad 1 opportunities that they have got to take advantage of because they had one tonight and let it slip right out of their hands, unfortunately for them. Okay, what do you say we end there for this evening? Great stuff, guys. Great comments. Always appreciate you bringing it. We will be back with you Saturday. That's a nooner between Syracuse and Georgia Tech. And we'll be with you Saturday afternoon doing this very post-game show. Orange Weekly will be back this week, Thursday, noon on these same channels you're watching. We just get together, just kind of talk SU sports. We'll check in on football, final thoughts. Lacrosse actually started this week. I was over with my colleague Emily Leiker talking to Gary Gate and some players this week. So, hey, out of nowhere, here comes lacrosse, right? Mostly basketball this time of the year, but we get together Thursdays at noon Eastern time, streaming live. But if you miss it, just like you miss the post-game show, you can always catch it on replay on our social media channels, on our YouTube channel, Syracuse Orange Sports, on syracuse.com, and in my recap at syracuse.com. We also put a post up on syracuse.com for Orange Weekly if you missed that. So that's when we'll meet again, Thursday at noon-ish Eastern time, and then Saturday after the Orange take on Georgia Tech. In the meantime, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you so much, as always, for coming by. As Antonio says here, thanks for the therapy. I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I'm here to help as best as I can, right? As Julie says here, definitely therapy to come in here and vent a little bit. Good night, everybody. Have yourself a terrific rest of your week. We'll chat again Thursday, and we'll chat again after the Georgia Tech game. For now, Syracuse loses to Miami, 82-78. This has been Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health.